Welcome to Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's, the podcast where I ask the question, whatever happened to the pizza at McDonald's? I'm your host, Brian Thompson. Last week, I attempted to discern whether, as my Canadian former McDonald's employee informant Steve indicated, McDonald's locations are still using their vintage pizza ovens to bake modern baked goods such as apple pies, muffins, etc. In the course of this inquiry, I learned from the oven's manufacturer that even if this were the case, it would be very unlikely that I could retrieve any forensic evidence from these ovens, as the existence of any old pizza remains inside of them would constitute a serious health code violation. Not to throw any particular McDonald's location under the proverbial bus, but I am not confident every McDonald's franchise owner is very concerned about violations such as this. I have thoroughly explored several McDonald's kitchens, break rooms, and employees-only lavatories, both by invitation and by stealthily crawling under the counter while employees were distracted by unruly customers. If I were to recount some of the things I have seen there, I am afraid even the strongest pink bismuth medication may not be enough to quell the churning you might experience in your gut. But as none of these horrible sights are McDonald's pizza related, I shall speak no more of them. Still, I am at present unable to travel to the nation of Canada and investigate the ovens myself, since COVID-19 coronavirus restrictions are still somewhat nebulous. At the time of this recording, Americans such as myself who are fully vaccinated do not have to undergo a mandatory 2-week quarantine when crossing Canadian borders. But, according to official guidelines, they must present a logistical plan to initiate such a quarantine if asked to do so. Confining myself to a single location for 14 days in a foreign country I am afraid would simply be too much of a temptation for my would-be assassins. So, I am waiting a while longer to make the trip. In the meantime, I am still curious as to why McDonald's pizza seems to have lasted longer in Canada than in the United States. For more insight, I decided to speak to another Canadian informant, who might offer a glimpse into the peculiarities of psychology inherent in these peoples of the North. Thankfully, I know just such a person, a gentleman named Karl. Do you remember when McDonald's served pizza?
Yeah, for sure, Brian. I grew up in Windsor, and Windsor, if it's known for one thing, it's not known for anything really. It's known for being next to Detroit, but if you grew up in Windsor, you know Windsor to be the place that has like the best pizza in the world. I mean, you got your Chicago deep dish, you got your New York pizza, you even got Montreal pizza, but Windsor pizza is the greatest pizza in the world. No one knows about it, and we don't care. So, of course, when McDonald's introduced pizza in Windsor, it was a big thing, Brian, because it's like now here's McDonald's, right, competing with the best pizza in the world in our hometown. And you know what? Yeah, and I got to agree, it was pretty good for the price. And I got to confirm too that my memory of McDonald's pizza had the cornmeal. It was definitely served with kind of cornmeal. Like they would sort of, I think they bake it on cornmeal, in that way it kind of slides around and it doesn't sort of stick to the pizza oven. So it was definitely cornmeal. I like to think that it probably survived in Canada to maybe 90, 95, 98. But I couldn't give any factual records to sort of back that up. But it did seem to last longer here in Canada.
That is what I've been able to gather. Reports vary as to exactly how long and exactly how widespread it was for whatever period of time, but it definitely seems to have lasted longer in Canada than in the United States, and I will ask you about that momentarily. But to back up, very briefly, you mentioned being exposed to different kinds of pizza. I'm familiar with New York-style pizza. It's big, it is flat, it is meant to be folded. I am familiar with Chicago deep dish, which is less of a pizza and more of a tomato-based birthday cake, but you also mentioned Montreal pizza, and that I am not familiar with. What is Montreal pizza?
Yeah, Montreal, I would say maybe Montreal pizza is closer to a New York style pizza, although I don't know about where you come from, but when you kind of deliver pizza, it comes in a box, right?
Correct.
And then the middle of the box can kind of sag a bit and kind of dip into the middle of the pizza, and it leaves that cheese on top of the pizza box. So a lot of delivery places have sort of engineered around this by putting like a little plastic thing in the middle that kind of keeps the center of the box from sort of folding or sort of dipping down into the cheese. But the Montreal style pizza, the way they engineer it around that is they put like a ball of dough right in the middle of the pizza. So it's this big ball of dough to actually put in the middle of the pizza. And then, you have kind of certain traditions who gets to eat the ball of dough. It's not raw dough. It's baked like the rest of the pizza. And, it's like, so the eldest son is allowed to eat it. Or it varies between families, but who gets to eat the dough ball. But so to me, that is what distinguishes Montreal pizza. And I believe it's a cheese. The cheese is on top, so the ingredients are kind of under the cheese.
Well, where would you put McDonald's pizza on the spectrum between tomato-based birthday cake and dough ball pizza?
Well, okay, so if Windsor pizza is a 10, a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the best possible pizza, and then I would put probably McDonald's pizza, I give it about a 6.5. So I have been to New York. I don't want to go back, but I have been to New York, and I would put the New York slice at about like a 7. And I've been to Chicago. I'd like to go back to Chicago. I've enjoyed the deep dish in Chicago, so I would maybe make Chicago deep dish an 8. But don't direct any hate mail towards me. But that's just my opinion. Okay.
Certainly. So let's talk about psychology, specifically Canadian psychology. You have been a Canadian your entire life. Is this correct?
I did live a few years in Seattle, but that is like part of Canada anyways for the most part.
What makes a Canadian in your mind? Someone who was born in Canada, or someone who has lived in Canada for a certain amount of time, someone with a certain affinity for hockey, a thickness of the skin to cope with the extreme cold?
Yeah, well, if you ignore our adaptations for the cold, I would say the best way to define a Canadian is by defining us as not Americans. So this is the way we tend to define ourselves. It's like, what is about being Canadian? Well, we don't all own handguns, okay? We don't have to pay for our medical care like Americans. Crime's not a problem like America. We don't spend all our money on the military like America. When we buy T-shirts, we leave the sleeves right on the T-shirts. We don't cut them off like every American does. So that's kind of how we define ourselves. It's a little sad, but you got to have something, right?
I do understand that there is a risk with all of the gunshot wounds that if the government paid for our health care, it might eventually bankrupt the entire country.
Yeah, you would think with, healthcare being completely free, we'd have a really cavalier attitude towards our health. But I don't know, surprisingly, we tend to play it safe. That maybe is a way to define Canadians. We tend to play it safe in everything.
Well, what is it about Canadians that makes them have such an affinity for McDonald's pizza as opposed to Americans? I find oftentimes when I call Americans and ask about McDonald's pizza, if they have never heard of it, I tell them about it. Sometimes they actually have already heard of it. I guess those must be the history buffs. But more often than you would think, people say, it does not sound appetizing to me. It does not sound like something that I would enjoy. Now, it is a fact that at all of the McDonald's locations that served McDonald's pizza, it was one of their top sellers. But regardless, there definitely seems to be less of an affinity for it in the United States than in Canada. Do you have any explanation for this or any theories?
I think there's probably three reasons. I mean, first we've got to deal with Howie Mandel, right? I mean, Howie Mandel was the pitch man or pitch person, I guess, for McDonald's Pizza in Canada. And, Howie Mandel, he's big in America. That carries a lot of weight in Canada. If you make it big in the States, whatever you say goes. He's done some comedy stuff, right? I think he was host of Star Search or something like that.
America's Got Talent. There was an incident in the past where I went to a taping of America's Got Talent to try to confront Howie Mandel and ask him some questions about being the spokesperson for McDonald's Pizza. And due to a series of events, I was forcibly ejected from the theater.
And they might have done you a favor, but yeah. So I think Howie Mandel pitching it, I think it kind of made it, cool. That's one thing. Two, what you got to understand, outside of Windsor, okay, you got your Windsor, best pizza in the world. Montreal people, they love their pizza, right? But everything else is it's a wasteland in terms of pizza. Pizza outside of Montreal and Windsor it's all like marketing gimmicks. It's like 2-for-1 coupon specials, clever jingles, that kind of thing. Phone numbers you can remember from the jingles, those kinds of things. It's all marketing. So when Canadians think pizza, we just think just market the hell out of it to us, and we'll buy it, right? So I think McDonald's they've got a marketing budget, right? Probably one of the bigger ones in the world. You got your Coca-Cola, you probably have your Olympics, and then you got McDonald's, right? Probably three biggest marketing budgets in the world, right? So yeah, so it's a huge thing in marketing, and then really it's just we didn't mind the wait, really. Like if someone was saying, "Hey, you could get a Big Mac in like 5 minutes, or if you wait 2 extra minutes, we'll give you a pizza. That's pretty good for the price." We'll go. You know what? I'll wait the extra two minutes, because you got to understand, right? Now, as I said, I live in Seattle. Okay, and I had a little health problem in Seattle. I had to get a CT scan. I got a CT scan like 6 days after my doctor wrote up the work order for it. Mm. Canada, it's free, but I'm gonna have to wait about 6 months before I can get my CT scan, right? So Canadians we're used to waiting for good things. So McDonald's Pizza, again, pretty good for the price. If we got to wait an extra 2 minutes, I had to wait 6 months for my CT scan.
Well, you mentioned earlier, before we started recording, that you had what I consider to be quite a stunning memory of a particular service offered by McDonald's at the time they served pizza in your part of the world, in the nation of Canada.
Yeah, I believe this is an exclusive, Brian. It's the first time I think anyone has ever revealed this information. Again, I grew up in Windsor. Pizza was a big thing. If you want to compete in Windsor for pizza, you got to have home delivery. You got to get a really ugly guy in a Honda to take that pizza to somebody's house. That's the only way you can actually sell pizza in Windsor. So McDonald's was test marketing home delivery for pizza in Windsor. I knew a friend who had a friend who was a pizza delivery guy for McDonald's. And here's the story I was told. He delivered a pizza, okay, for McDonald's to a house. Of course, Brian, when you go to McDonald's, do you tip the 13-year-old behind the counter? Oh, yes. I usually just carry a stack of bills and fan them out. Okay, all right. In Canada, we don't tip our McDonald's cashier, right? There's no tipping. So this guy who was, having the pizza delivered to him just assumed it was the same thing. You work for McDonald's. I don't tip the 13-year-old. I don't tip my driver. Guy stiffed him. You know what my friend did? When he was stiffed?
I do not.
He got in his car, and he then drove his car onto the dude's lawn and just did donuts on his lawn. Just tore up his grass and then drove off. And that taught him a lesson. Tip your pizza delivery guy. Doesn't matter if they work for McDonald's. If now it's like an Uber guy that's coming and bringing the pizza or not bringing the Big Mac, still tip him. That's what you got to do. I have so many questions about this
incident. Number one, I suppose, is this. Is vigilantism legal in Canada?
No. You don't typically take the law into your own hands. But I would say doing donuts on a guy's lawn with your car, tearing up his lawn because he's not tipped you, I wouldn't equate that with vigilantism, because there was no crime there, Brian. Okay? This is just, one dude being a dill to a hard-working Windsor guy, right? So,
I see. So you have not outlawed being a D-hole.
Yeah, I apologize. I said the word dill on your podcast. I know.
Oh, that is okay. I can just bleep it. I guess that negates my next question, which would be, how could they possibly have not found the culprit, seeing as how he was driving a McDonald's pizza delivery vehicle that was covered in grass and dirt?
It's like, there's a lot of crimes that never get reported because the victim is too embarrassed. Right? I think this is one of those kind of, it's like for the cops that show up and be like, and then what happened? Well, then I didn't give him a tip.
Right.
You see how this is going to go down? Right.
And then to save face, he would be forced to tip the police officers even more generously than normal.
Well, yeah, that too. So it's really, it's not even a zero-sum game where you're already in the hole for repairing your line. Sod's not cheap in Canada, so you're in the hole for that, and then you got to tip the cops. Yeah, it's not even worth reporting.
From where does Canada primarily import its sod?
Good question. We never really think too much of that. I know the sod barges come in every May, and then you go down to the dock and you get your wristband, and then you hopefully you get a high number, and if you get a high number, then you're closer. You're first in. You get purchase the sod you need. If you're a lower number, sorry, you're in back, and you just have to maybe have little hunks of leftover sod and stuff like that. But yeah, just honestly, God, no one questions it.
Well, this is just a facetious joculation, but perhaps it comes from Saudi Arabia. Again, that was just a joculation, not to be taken seriously. Well, I have more questions about this pizza delivery. So this gentleman that this vigilante, I would argue, although perhaps not technically so in the nation of Canada, who delivered pizza for McDonald's, was this his only job for McDonald's, or was he a general employee who occasionally delivered pizza?
My impression was that he was not, say, an official employee of McDonald's, so he didn't have like a uniform and polyester pants and stuff like that. Get like a 50% discount meals and the education bonus and stuff like that. But I think he was probably like a contractor, so you get $2 for every pizza you deliver plus tips. So yeah, I think that to me was the how they operate under. So what would you call a contractor? Was that what would you call them in the States? Where you're not really an employee. You're kind of a quote contractor, but you're everything. You're an employee, but they just don't want to give you benefits, kind of thing. I think that's basically what it might have been running.
Yeah, well, it sounds very similar to the United States, where we've transitioned to a 100% gig economy. There are no full-time employees anymore. And frankly, we all love the flexibility it gives us and the time it gives us to spend with our families, which we do need because we actually have to spend much more time scavenging for necessities like food and shelter.
It's a life, Brian.
My last question. The delivery vehicle itself, did it bear any kind of McDonald's branding, such as a light-up sign on top, a magnetic decal on the side of the door, a paint job in the McDonald's pizza official colors of green, white, and red?
Well, yeah. I mean, my impression was that it's like you bring your own car, right? So it's like they don't have their own delivery fleet, McDonald's delivery fleet, which would be kind of cool. You could just imagine every different car has like a different McDonald's character kind of on top, like little bobbleheads or something. That would be kind of cool. But yeah. So you just bring your own car. I do not think they would sort of then sort of brand the car in any way, like, kind of have like a magnetic decal on the side, or, kind of like a topper you'd put on the car, so something like that. I just think, again, this was very like trial, test marketing this out. Like, it might have only been just one McDonald's in all of Windsor that was trying out the pizza deliveries, so I don't think they were really geared up for, I don't think they thought this thing out, actually.
I see. And now a word from our sponsor. Are you a fast food franchise owner, perhaps even of a McDonald's, and are having trouble finding employees to return to your place of business after the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic because you do not want to give them benefits, pay them a living wage, or treat them with respect? Try ZipRecruiter. Thank you for consuming Whatever Happened to Pizza at McDonald's. For more information, please visit our attractive website at pizzaatmcdonalds.com. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. For exclusive rewards, join our Patreon at patreon.com/pizzaatmcd's. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at pizzaatmcd's. Browse our priceless merchandise at TeePublic. And purchase my best-selling book, How to Be an Investigative Journalist, at howtobeaninvestigativejournalist.com or wherever books are sold. Do you know what happened to pizza at McDonald's? Do you remember it? Please send all correspondence to pizzaatmcdonalds@gmail.com. Thank you to my invaluable Patreon producers. Until next time, I'm Brian Thompson, Investigative Journalist.